The gunshot that killed Brianna Klein's father echoed through the rocky canyons of Reno, Nevada for 3 days before anyone found his body. And by then, the claim jumpers who murdered him had already fled with everything he owned except the 5 hungry children huddled in a leaking tent on the edge of town. It was August 1873, and the silver mines were running dry, while desperation ran thick as summer dust through the ramshackle streets, where fortune seekers had become fortune losers, clinging to dreams that had long since turned to ash in the unforgiving desert heat. Brianna pressed her palm against the splintered wood of the general store's back entrance, her other hand gripping the corner of her threadbare shawl as Mr. Henderson's voice boomed from inside. She had come to beg for credit, knowing full well that her family's account was already stretched beyond reason. The twins, barely 6 years old, had eaten nothing but watery gruel for 2 days. Michael, at 9, had stopped complaining about his empty stomach. Sarah, 11, tried to help by searching for wild plants in the hills, but the Nevada desert was not generous with its bounty. And little Emma, just 4 years old, had stopped asking when Papa would come home. The door swung open before Brianna could knock, and Mr. Henderson's weathered face appeared, his expression as hard as the mountains surrounding them. "Miss Klein, I have told you 3 times this week. No more credit. Your father's debts died with him, but so did any goodwill this store can extend. Please." The word came out as a whisper, and Brianna hated herself for the weakness in her voice. She was 21 years old, strong enough to swing a pickaxe alongside her father in better days, capable enough to read and write when half the town could do neither. But standing here, begging for flour and beans to keep her siblings alive, she felt as small as Emma. "Just until I can find work. I will pay you back every cent." "Work?" Mr. Henderson's laugh was bitter. "Girl, there is no work in this town for a woman alone with 5 mouths to feed. The respectable families already have help, and the other kind of work, well, that would not keep those children fed for long." Brianna's cheeks burned, but she held her ground. "I can clean, cook, mend, keep books. My father taught me mathematics and reading. Then your father did you a disservice, filling your head with learning instead of finding you a husband." Mr. Henderson started to close the door, then paused. "There is a man looking for someone to help with his ranch. Been asking around town. Name's Preston Sterling. Came down from Oregon Territory with a herd of cattle, thinking to make his fortune in Nevada. Fool's errand if you ask me, but he has money to spend. Ranch is about 5 miles north, past the old mission ruins." The door closed with finality, and Brianna stood alone in the alley, the afternoon sun beating down mercilessly on her uncovered head. 5 miles in this heat, with no guarantee of work at the end of it. But what choice did she have? She made it back to their tent as the sun was beginning its descent, painting the sky in shades of copper and rust. The tent sagged on one side where the support pole had cracked, and Brianna could see straight through a tear in the canvas to where Sarah was trying to entertain Emma with a story. The little girl's face was thin, too thin, and her eyes seemed too large for her small head. "Brianna," Michael appeared from behind the tent, his hands cupped carefully around something. "Look, I caught a lizard. Can we cook it?" Her heart broke a little more. "We will have something better soon, I promise. I heard about work, real work with real pay. I am going to walk out to the Sterling Ranch tomorrow at first light." Sarah emerged from the tent, her expression older than her 11 years. 5 miles is a long way in the sun. You should take water." "We do not have water to spare." Brianna squeezed her sister's shoulder. "But I will be fine. I need you to watch the little ones while I am gone. Can you do that?" "I always do." There was no resentment in Sarah's voice, only weary acceptance of responsibilities no child should carry. That night, Brianna lay awake on the hard ground, listening to her siblings breathing. The twins, Jacob and James, were curled together like puppies, seeking comfort in each other's warmth despite the lingering heat. Emma whimpered in her sleep, and Sarah automatically reached out to soothe her without fully waking. Michael twitched and mumbled, probably dreaming of food. Brianna closed her eyes and thought of her father. Robert Klein had been a dreamer, always convinced that the next claim would be the one to strike it rich. He had dragged them from California to Nevada, chasing rumors of silver, sacrificing stability for possibility, and it had killed him. The claim jumpers who shot him probably got nothing for their trouble except murder on their consciences, if they had any conscience at all. She left before dawn, while stars still pierced the purple-black sky. The air was cool, almost pleasant, and Brianna walked quickly to cover as much ground as possible before the sun rose in earnest. She had filled her father's old canteen with the last of their water, knowing the children would suffer for it but unable to face the journey without something to drink. The road north was little more than a rutted track, marked by the passage of cattle and wagons but not maintained by any hand. Brianna's boots, already worn thin, sent small puffs of dust with each step. She passed the old mission ruins as the sun crested the eastern mountains, flooding the valley with sudden, blazing light. The Sterling ranch appeared as a cluster of dark shapes against the brown landscape, gradually resolving into a barn, a corral, a modest house, and several outbuildings. Cattle dotted the surrounding hills, their hides gleaming red and brown in the morning sun. As Brianna approached, she could hear the sound of hammering and saw a tall figure working on the corral fence. He straightened as she drew near, and Brianna found herself looking at a man perhaps a few years older than herself, with dark hair that curled at his collar and eyes the color of summer sky. His shirt was dusty and sweat-stained, his hands calloused from work, but there was something in the way he carried himself that spoke of capability and quiet strength. "Help you, miss." His voice was deep, polite, with a hint of concern as he took in her dusty appearance and the desperation she was probably doing a poor job of hiding. "I am looking for Preston Sterling. I heard he might have work available. You found him." He set down his hammer and walked closer, studying her with an intensity that made Brianna want to look away, but she forced herself to meet his gaze. "You walked from town in this heat." "I did. Alone. I am alone in most things these days." Something flickered in his expression, an emotion she could not quite read. "What kind of work are you looking for?" "Any kind you have. I can cook, clean, mend clothes, tend animals, keep books if you need records kept. I can read and write and figure numbers. I am strong, and I am willing to work hard." The words tumbled out faster than she intended, and Brianna forced herself to slow down, to not sound quite so desperate even though they both knew she was. Preston Sterling rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. "I have been managing on my own, but I will admit the place is getting away from me. I have 200 head of cattle to look after, this ranch to maintain, and I am planning to build on more living quarters before winter. Having someone to handle the house and cooking would free me up considerably." He paused. "But I am curious why a young woman like yourself is hiring out for ranch work. Does your family know you are here?" "My family is why I am here." Brianna straightened her shoulders. "My father was killed 3 weeks ago. He left me with 5 younger siblings and nothing else. No money, no home, no food. The youngest is 4 years old. Mr. Sterling, I am not looking for easy work or pleasant work. I am looking for any work that will keep my brothers and sisters alive." The silence stretched between them, broken only by the lowing of cattle in the distance and the whisper of wind across the dry grass. Preston's expression had shifted, the polite interest replaced by something deeper, something that looked almost like pain. "5 siblings," he said quietly. "How old?" "Emma is 4, the twins Jacob and James are 6, Michael is 9, and Sarah is 11. And you are taking care of them all alone. There is no one else." Brianna felt her throat tighten and fought against it. She could not afford to break down now, not when she was so close to possibly securing help. "Mr. Sterling, I know this is not a normal situation. I know most people would say those children should go to an orphanage or be split up among families willing to take them in, but they are my family. They are all I have left, and I am all they have. I will do whatever it takes to keep us together." Preston was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant, as if he were looking at something only he could see. When he spoke again, his voice was rough. "I lost my own family when I was 17. Fire took our farm in Oregon, took my parents and my 3 younger brothers. I was out checking the north pasture, and by the time I saw the smoke and got back, there was nothing left to save. I have spent every day since then wondering if I could have done something different, been there sooner, saved them somehow." Brianna's breath caught. "I am so sorry. It was a long time ago, 8 years now. But I remember what it felt like to be desperate, to be alone, to feel like the weight of the world was on my shoulders with no one to help carry it." He met her eyes directly. "I will give you work, Miss Klein. Fair wages, paid weekly. You can bring your siblings here. The house has 3 bedrooms, more space than I need on my own. You and the girls can take 2 rooms, the boys can share the 3rd, and I will move my things out to the barn loft." Brianna stared at him, unable to process what she was hearing. "You would let us live here, all of us?" "I have the space, and you clearly need it, but I want to be clear about the arrangement. This is employment, honest work for honest pay. I am not offering charity, and I am not expecting anything improper. You will earn your keep, and your siblings will be expected to help with age-appropriate chores. In return, you will have a roof over your heads, food on the table, and safety. Does that sound acceptable?" "More than acceptable. Mr. Sterling, I do not know what to say except thank you. Say you will start today. Say you will go back to town, gather your family and whatever possessions you have, and be back here before dark. I will have the rooms ready and a hot meal waiting." The walk back to Reno seemed shorter, perhaps because Brianna was moving faster, or perhaps because hope made the burden lighter. She burst into the tent to find Sarah trying to convince the twins to eat the last of their meager supplies. "Pack everything," Brianna announced, her voice ringing with an energy she had not felt in weeks. "We are leaving. We have a new home." The flurry of activity that followed would have been comical if it were not so pathetic. Their possessions fit into 2 canvas bags and a small trunk. Clothes, mostly worn and patched. A few books that had been their father's pride. Some cooking utensils. The threadbare blankets they slept under. Emma's rag doll, the twins' shared wooden horse, Michael's collection of interesting rocks, Sarah's mother's hairbrush. The children peppered Brianna with questions as they walked, and she answered as best she could, describing Preston Sterling and his ranch, painting a picture of the new life waiting for them. Michael was skeptical, Sarah cautiously optimistic, the twins excited, and Emma simply held Brianna's hand and trusted that her big sister knew what she was doing. They reached the ranch as the sun was descending toward the mountains, and Preston emerged from the house to meet them. Brianna watched as his eyes moved over each child, taking in their thin faces and worn clothing, the way they clustered close to her like chicks around a hen. "Welcome," he said simply. "I am Preston Sterling, and you must be the Klein family. Come inside." Supper is ready, and then I will show you to your rooms." The meal was simple but plentiful. Beef stew with carrots and potatoes, fresh bread with butter, milk for the children, and coffee for Brianna and Preston. The children ate with a single-minded intensity that embarrassed Brianna, but Preston seemed to understand. He kept the conversation light, asking gentle questions about their interests and telling stories about the cattle and the ranch that made even Sarah smile. After supper, he showed them through the house. It was solidly built, with wooden floors and real glass windows, a luxury Brianna had almost forgotten existed. The bedrooms were small but clean, each with real beds and mattresses, blankets that were whole and warm, even curtains on the windows. Emma fell asleep almost instantly, curled in the bed she would share with Sarah, her thumb in her mouth. The twins were not far behind, and Michael fought to keep his eyes open long enough to say good night. Sarah helped Brianna tuck everyone in, and then the two young women stood in the hallway looking at each other. "Is this real?" Sarah whispered. "I think so, I hope so. He seems kind, he does. Brianna, what did you promise him? What does he expect from you?" The question was older than Sarah's years, born of a harsh world where nothing came free, especially not for women. Brianna met her sister's worried gaze steadily. "He expects me to work hard and earn my keep, nothing more. He lost his own family, Sarah. I think he understands what we are going through. Just be careful." "I will. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow we start our new life." Brianna found Preston on the porch, sitting in a weathered rocking chair and looking out at the darkening hills. She hesitated, then joined him, leaning against the porch railing. "Thank you," she said, "for all of this. You have given us more than I dared hope for. You have not started work yet. You might find ranch life harder than you expect." "Mr. Sterling, I have been living in a leaking tent on the edge of town, watching my siblings slowly starve. I do not think anything you ask of me will be harder than that." He was quiet for a moment. "Call me Preston. If we are going to be living under the same roof, we should dispense with excessive formality. Then you should call me Brianna. Brianna." He said her name carefully, as if testing the sound of it. "Tomorrow I will need to check on the cattle in the north pasture. It will take most of the day. Can you manage here? Get the children settled, maybe start sorting out the kitchen. I will not pretend to be a good housekeeper. I'm afraid you will find things in a bit of disarray. I can manage. Preston, what made you decide to help us?" "I mean truly help us, not just offer a job but open your home." He rocked slowly, the chair creaking with the motion. "When I lost my family, people were not kind. They saw a 17-year-old boy with nothing, and they saw someone to take advantage of. I worked for almost nothing, slept in barns, went hungry more often than not. It took me years to save enough to start over, to buy my first cattle and make my way down here looking for better grazing land. I swore if I ever had the chance to help someone the way I needed help back then, I would do it. Still, taking in 6 strangers is a considerable risk. Maybe, or maybe it is the first smart thing I have done since I arrived in Nevada." He turned to look at her, and even in the dim light from the house, Brianna could see the intensity in his eyes. "This ranch is too big for one person. I have been managing, but barely. Having help is not charity, Brianna. It is good business. And if that help comes in the form of a capable woman and 5 children who need a home, well, that seems like an arrangement that benefits everyone." Brianna wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that this sudden change in their fortunes was real and lasting. But she had learned the hard way that fortune was fickle and people often had hidden motivations. "I will earn my keep," she said firmly. "You will not regret taking us in." "I do not think I will." Preston stood, stretching. "I am for bed. The cows wake early and so must I. Good night, Brianna." "Good night, Preston." She stayed on the porch after he went inside, watching the stars emerge one by one in the vast Nevada sky. Somewhere in the darkness, cattle moved and settled. A coyote called from the hills, its voice lonely and wild. But here, in this small circle of light and safety, Brianna and her siblings had found refuge. The first week passed in a blur of activity. Brianna threw herself into making the house a home, scrubbing floors and washing windows, organizing the kitchen and preparing 3 meals a day that were hearty and hot. She mended Preston's clothes, finding shirts with buttons hanging by threads and socks with holes worn through. She discovered he was not joking about his poor housekeeping. The barn was better organized than his kitchen had been. The children adapted with the resilience of youth. Emma attached herself to Preston almost immediately, following him around when he was near the house and chattering to him with the unself-conscious confidence of a 4-year-old who has decided someone is safe. The twins took to ranch life with enthusiasm, begging to help with the animals and running wild through the safe confines of the property, in a way they had never been able to in town. Michael appointed himself Preston's unofficial assistant, trailing after the older man and absorbing every scrap of knowledge about cattle and ranching. Even Sarah, cautious and protective, began to relax, her smiles coming more frequently. For Brianna, the days were exhausting but satisfying in a way she had not experienced before. She fell into bed each night too tired to worry, too tired to grieve, and woke each morning to the smell of coffee and the sound of Preston moving quietly through the house, trying not to disturb anyone. They developed a rhythm, an easy partnership that required little discussion. Preston would rise before dawn, and Brianna would have coffee and breakfast ready by the time he came in from checking the animals. He would tell her his plans for the day, and she would organize the household accordingly. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch after the children were in bed, talking about everything and nothing, learning each other's stories. She learned that Preston had educated himself, reading every book he could get his hands on during the long Oregon winters of his youth. He had a sharp mind and a gentle sense of humor that emerged once he felt comfortable. He was patient with the children, answering Michael's endless questions and listening solemnly to Emma's rambling stories. He never raised his voice, never showed frustration with the chaos that 6 additional people brought to his orderly life. And Brianna found herself watching him more than she should, noticing the way his shoulders moved as he worked, the rare smile that transformed his serious face, the kindness in his eyes when he looked at her siblings. She told herself it was gratitude, nothing more. He had saved them, given them a home when they had nothing. Of course, she would feel warmly toward him. But it was becoming something more than warmth, something that made her heart beat faster when he walked into a room, something that made her hyper-aware of his presence, his voice, the accidental brush of his hand when they passed each other in the narrow hallway. It was dangerous, this feeling. She was his employee, dependent on his goodwill for her family's survival. She could not afford to complicate things with emotions that Preston almost certainly did not share. The second week brought challenges. One of the cattle fell ill, and Preston spent 2 days and nights in the barn, trying to nurse it back to health. Brianna brought him meals and coffee, staying to help when she could, learning to mix medicines and hold the animal steady while Preston examined it. They worked side by side in the lantern light, and when the cow finally recovered, stumbling to its feet on shaky legs, they grinned at each other with the shared triumph of a hard-won victory. "You are a natural," Preston said, washing his hands in the water bucket. "Most people are afraid of cattle, especially the bulls, but you are steady. The animals can sense that." My father kept a milk cow when I was young before he caught mining fever. I remember helping him in the barn. Brianna dried her own hands on her apron. It seems like another lifetime now. What was he like, your father, before everything went wrong? Brianna considered the question. Loving but restless. He always believed something better was just around the corner, just over the next hill. My mother died giving birth to Emma, and after that, Papa could not seem to settle. It was like he was running from grief, always moving, always chasing dreams, and it killed him in the end. You resent him for that. It was not a question, but Brianna answered anyway. I do and I do not. He loved us. I know he did. But his dreams mattered more than our stability, and now he is gone and we are the ones paying the price. Or we were, until you gave us a chance. Preston was quiet, then reached out and gently touched her shoulder. It was the first time he had deliberately touched her, and Brianna felt the warmth of his hand through her sleeve like a brand. You are not paying any price here, Brianna. You and your family are safe. I will make sure of that. She believed him, and that was perhaps the most dangerous thing of all. The third week brought visitors. A wagon rolled up to the ranch one afternoon, carrying a middle-aged couple Brianna recognized from town. The Hendersons, who owned the general store that had turned her away. Mrs. Henderson descended from the wagon with the air of a woman on a mission. Mr. Sterling, we heard you had taken in the Klein children. We felt it was our Christian duty to come see how they were faring. Brianna, watching from the house, felt her stomach clench. She knew what this was. Gossip, judgment, the respectable people of Reno coming to see the scandal of an unmarried man and woman living under the same roof. But Preston handled it with a calm grace that left Mrs. Henderson little room to maneuver. How kind of you to be concerned. Miss Klein and her siblings are doing very well. She has been an invaluable help with the ranch, and the children are thriving. Would you like to come in? Brianna makes excellent coffee. They came in, and Brianna served them with a steady hand, ignoring Mrs. Henderson's sharp eyes taking in every detail of the house. The children were called in and inspected like livestock, and Brianna had to bite her tongue to keep from saying something she would regret. They certainly look healthier than when we last saw them, Mr. Henderson admitted. The little one was skin and bones. She is eating properly now, Brianna said evenly, as are all my siblings. Mr. Sterling has been generous with both wages and provisions. Generous, Mrs. Henderson repeated, investing the word with meaning. Mr. Sterling, surely you see the impropriety of this situation. An unmarried woman living in your house without a chaperone or proper oversight. People are talking. Let them talk, Preston said, his voice pleasant but firm. I have hired Miss Klein to help manage my ranch. She and her siblings occupy separate quarters. Everything is completely proper and respectable. If people choose to make something sordid out of a straightforward business arrangement, that reflects poorly on them, not on us. Mrs. Henderson pursed her lips. Nevertheless, appearances matter. The church ladies are quite concerned. Perhaps if Miss Klein and the children were to attend services this Sunday, people could see for themselves that everything is above board. We will be there, Brianna said, making the decision instantly. She would not give these people the satisfaction of thinking she was hiding or ashamed. All of us. After the Hendersons left, Preston turned to Brianna with concern. You do not have to go to town if you do not want to. I know those people were not kind to you when you needed help. That is precisely why I need to go. I will not let them think I am hiding here, doing something shameful. And besides, it would be good for the children to be around other people, to start building normal lives again. Then we will all go together. Let them see that the Klein family has friends and support. Sunday morning found them all scrubbed and dressed in their best clothes. which for the children meant their least patched outfits, and for Brianna meant the one dress she owned that was not strictly functional. It was a simple blue cotton, faded from many washings but still respectable. She was surprised when Preston emerged from his room wearing a suit, his dark hair neatly combed, his jaw freshly shaved. He looked different, refined in a way that made Brianna's mouth go dry. He caught her looking and gave a wry smile. "I clean up reasonably well when I make the effort." "You look very respectable, so do you. That dress brings out your eyes." The compliment, casual as it was, made Brianna's cheeks warm. She busied herself with checking the children, making sure faces were clean and hair was combed, and tried to ignore the way her heart was beating faster. The church in Reno was a simple wooden structure, whitewashed and stark against the brown hills. It was already nearly full when they arrived, and Brianna was aware of heads turning, whispers spreading like ripples across a pond. She held her head high and walked down the aisle with Emma's hand in hers, Preston beside her, and the other children following. They filled an entire pew, a small army of Kleins plus their benefactor. Brianna could feel eyes boring into her back, could imagine the conversations happening in hissed whispers. But she focused on the service, on the hymns and the sermon, on being a model of propriety and respectability. After the service, several women approached, ostensibly to welcome them but really to gather more information for the gossip mill. Brianna answered questions with polite brevity, volunteering nothing beyond the basics. Yes, the children were doing well. Yes, Mr. Sterling had been very generous with employment. No, there was nothing improper about the arrangement. Preston, for his part, was charmingly evasive, deflecting nosiness with humor and redirecting conversations to neutral topics like weather and cattle prices. Together, they presented a united front that gave the gossips nothing to work with beyond speculation. They were preparing to leave when a man Brianna did not recognize approached Preston, his expression serious. "Sterling, I heard you are planning some building projects. I might have some work for you if you are interested in a contract." Preston introduced him as Thomas Winters, who owned a spread about 20 miles south. "Always interested in honest work. What did you have in mind?" "I need a new barn built before winter, and my regular crew is tied up with other projects. If you are as handy with carpentry as people say, I would pay fair wages for your time and expertise." They talked details while Brianna gathered the children, and by the time they were in the wagon heading home, Preston had agreed to spend 3 days a week working on the Winters barn, starting the following week. "That will bring in good money," he said, handling the reins with easy competence. "Enough to buy more cattle before winter, expand the herd. This could be a real opportunity." "But who will manage things here while you are gone 3 days a week?" Brianna asked. "I was hoping you would be willing to take that on. You have been learning fast." "Between you and Michael, the basic tasks can be handled. I will take care of anything heavy or complicated on my days here." "You trust me that much?" Preston glanced at her, his expression warm. "Brianna, I would trust you with my life. You have proven yourself tenfold in the past few weeks. You are capable, intelligent, and reliable. If I did not have faith in you, I would not have made the arrangement with Winters." The praise made Brianna's chest tight with something that felt like happiness, or maybe something deeper. She was starting to realize that Preston Sterling was becoming important to her in ways that went beyond gratitude, beyond simple friendship. She was starting to fall in love with him, and she had no idea what to do about it. The next few weeks established a new pattern. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, Preston would leave before dawn to work on the Winters barn, returning late and exhausted. Tuesday, Thursday, and weekends, he would focus on his own ranch, with Brianna working alongside him more and more. She learned to doctor cattle, to mend fences, to recognize the signs of illness or injury in the herd. She learned to ride Preston's spare horse, an old gelding named Dusty who was patient with her inexperience. She learned the boundaries of the property, the best grazing areas, the water sources that needed to be checked regularly. Michael shadowed her the way he had shadowed Preston, absorbing knowledge like a sponge. The boy had found his calling, and Brianna could see the rancher he would someday become. Sarah took over more of the household tasks, cooking meals and watching the younger children with a competence that made Brianna both proud and sad. Her sister was growing up too fast, forced into adulthood by circumstances beyond her control. One evening in late September, after the children were in bed, Brianna and Preston sat on the porch as had become their habit. The air was finally cooling with the approach of autumn, and the stars overhead seemed close enough to touch. "The winter's job is almost done," Preston said. "Another week, maybe two. Thomas has been pleased with the work. He has recommended me to some other ranchers in the area." "That is wonderful, more opportunities for income." "It is. But Brianna, I have been thinking. This ranch is doing well, better than I expected. A lot of that is because you have been here, managing things, keeping everything running smoothly. You have earned a raise, and I want to make sure you and the children are provided for long term. Preston, you have already been more than generous. Hear me out." He shifted to face her, his expression serious in the dim light. "This ranch could support more than just me. It could support a family. A real family with stability and security. The children are thriving here. Even Sarah is starting to relax, to act more like a child and less like a worried adult. Emma has put on weight, the twins are healthy and happy, Michael is learning a trade that will serve him well his entire life. I know, you have given them all of that. We have given them that. You and me working together." Preston took a breath. "Brianna, I am not good with pretty words. I am a rancher, not a poet. But I need you to know that these past 2 months have been the best of my life since I lost my own family. Coming home to a house full of people, to children laughing and you smiling, to meals shared and conversations that matter. It has made me realize how lonely I was before, how much I was just going through the motions of living without really being alive." Brianna's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he must be able to hear it. "Preston, what are you saying?" "I am saying that I have come to care for you deeply. I am saying that when I look at the future, I see you in it, beside me, not as my employee but as my partner. I know it is fast, and I know I am probably overstepping, but I cannot keep it to myself anymore." He reached out and took her hand, his calloused fingers warm and strong around hers. "I am saying that I am falling in love with you, Brianna Klein, and I am hoping that maybe you feel something for me too." "I do," she whispered, the words escaping before she could think better of them. "Preston, I have been falling in love with you since that first day when you opened your home to 6 desperate strangers. I kept telling myself it was just gratitude, that I was being foolish, but it is more than that. You are kind and good and strong, and you make me feel safe in a way I have not felt since my mother died." Preston's smile was radiant, transforming his face. "Then I have a question to ask you, and I want you to really think about it before you answer." He slid from his chair and knelt in front of her, still holding her hand. "Brianna, I have 5 younger siblings to provide for," you said. "That means 5 reasons to build a good life, 5 reasons to work hard and plan for the future. But you were wrong about something." "What?" "You do not have 5 siblings. You have 5 younger siblings, 5 children who need a home and a family and people who love them." His eyes were intense, full of emotion. "And I do not see 5 burdens or 5 obligations. I see 5 reasons to marry you if you will have me. I see Emma's laugh and the twins' energy and Michael's curiosity and Sarah's strength and your determination and courage. I see a ready-made family that I would be honored to call my own. So, Brianna Klein, will you marry me? Will you let me be a father to those children and a husband to you, a true partner in every sense? Tears were streaming down Brianna's face, but she was smiling, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. Yes, yes, Preston, I will marry you. But not because you are offering to take care of my siblings. I will marry you because I love you, because you are the best man I have ever known, because I cannot imagine my life without you in it. Preston stood and pulled her up into his arms, holding her close. She could feel his heart beating against hers, could feel the strength of his embrace, could feel the rightness of this moment. When he kissed her, it was gentle and sweet and full of promise. "We will do this properly," he said when they finally pulled apart. "I will speak to the children tomorrow, make sure they are comfortable with the idea. We will have a proper wedding in the church, invite the whole town if you want. Let everyone see that this is real and right and nothing to gossip about. The children already love you. I think they will be thrilled. And I love them. How could I not? They are part of you, extensions of your heart. When I say I want to marry you, I mean all of you, the whole package. Your stubbornness and your strength, your fierce protectiveness and your gentle kindness, and the 5 small reasons that make you who you are." They stayed up late that night, making plans and dreaming about the future, talking about everything from what month they should marry to what color to paint the expanded bedrooms Preston wanted to build. They were still sitting on the porch when the sky began to lighten in the east, and Preston finally stood reluctantly. "I should catch a few hours of sleep before I need to head to the Winters place." "Skip it today. Stay here. Thomas Winters can wait one more day," Preston laughed. "Trying to get me to neglect my responsibilities already, and we are not even married yet. I just want to spend the day with you, with all of us together. I want to tell the children our news, see their faces when we explain that you are going to be their brother, officially. How about a compromise? I will go do a few hours of work, fulfill my obligation to Winters, and come home early. We can tell the children this evening, all of us together." It was sensible, responsible, exactly what Brianna should have expected from Preston. She agreed, and they parted with one more kiss, sweet and full of promise. The day passed in a strange haze for Brianna. She went through her usual tasks mechanically, her mind on the previous night's conversation. She was going to marry Preston Sterling. The children would have a father, a real home, a secure future. It felt too good to be true, and a small part of her kept waiting for something to go wrong. But nothing went wrong. Preston returned in the early afternoon as promised, and after supper, they called the children together in the main room. "We have something important to tell you all," Brianna began, looking at the 5 faces that were so dear to her. "Preston has asked me to marry him, and I said yes. But before we make it official, we wanted to make sure you are all comfortable with this change. It means Preston would become part of our family officially, your brother-in-law and guardian. We want to know how you feel about that." There was a moment of silence, and then Emma launched herself at Preston with a squeal. "You are going to be my brother forever, if you will have me," Preston said, catching the little girl and swinging her up. Michael stood and extended his hand solemnly. "I think it is a fine idea, sir. You have been teaching me a lot, and I would be proud to call you family." "The feeling is mutual, Michael." The twins just grinned and nodded, easily pleased. But Sarah was quiet, her face thoughtful. Brianna felt her stomach clench. She needed Sarah's approval, needed to know that her sister understood and accepted this change. "Sarah," Brianna prompted gently, "what do you think?" Sarah stood and walked over to where Preston sat with Emma in his lap. She studied him seriously, this man who had saved them all, and then turned to Brianna. "I think Mama would be happy that you found someone good. I think Papa would approve too, even though he was not always wise himself. Preston has been kind to us when no one else was. He has made you smile again, Brianna. I have not seen you smile like you do around him since before Mama died." She looked back at Preston. "If you promise to take care of my sister and love her the way she deserves, then I think it is a wonderful idea." "I promise," Preston said solemnly. "And Sarah, I promise to take care of all of you. You are not just Brianna's siblings. You are my family now too. That is not a burden. It is a privilege." Sarah's eyes filled with tears and she nodded. "Then I am happy for you both." The planning began in earnest the next day. They decided on a November wedding, giving them enough time to make preparations, but not so long that the weather would turn dangerous. Brianna wanted something simple, but Preston insisted on inviting everyone in the area, determined to show the town that this marriage was a celebration, not something to hide. The weeks leading up to the wedding were busy and happy. Preston worked on expanding the house, building 2 more bedrooms so that the twins could eventually have their own space and Michael would not be crowded. He built a new barn, larger and sturdier than the original, and invested in more cattle. The ranch was thriving, and so was the family that called it home. Brianna sewed a new dress for the wedding with fabric Preston brought from town, a soft green that made her eyes bright. Sarah helped, her stitching careful and precise. Mrs. Winters, Thomas's wife, came to visit and became an unexpected friend, offering advice and support and serving as a buffer against some of the more judgmental women in town. The night before the wedding, Brianna could not sleep. She lay in bed, listening to Emma's soft breathing beside her, and thought about how much had changed in just 3 months. She had gone from desperate and starving, living in a tent with no prospects, to engaged to a good man with a home and security. But more than that, she had found love. Real, deep, lasting love with someone who saw her not as a burden or an obligation, but as a partner and an equal. Preston valued her opinions, respected her intelligence, appreciated her strength. He made her laugh and feel cherished. He had taken her broken family and helped make it whole again. The wedding day dawned clear and cool, perfect autumn weather. The church was packed with people, some genuinely happy for them and others clearly there for the spectacle. Brianna did not care. She walked down the aisle in her green dress, her siblings beside her, and saw only Preston waiting at the altar, his face full of love and joy. The vows were traditional, but when Preston promised to love and cherish her, Brianna heard the deeper promise underneath. To protect her family, to build a life together, to face whatever challenges came as partners. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Preston kissed her thoroughly, earning hoots and cheers from the congregation. Emma squealed with delight, and even Michael grinned widely. The reception was held at the ranch, with tables set up outside and food enough to feed the whole town. People Brianna had never met came to wish them well, and others she did know offered stiff congratulations that barely masked their disapproval. She did not care. She was married to Preston Sterling, and nothing else mattered. As the sun set and the party began to wind down, Preston took her hand and led her away from the crowd, to the small rise behind the house where they had stood that first morning when she had come looking for work. "Happy?" he asked, pulling her close. "Happier than I have ever been. Preston, when my father died, I thought my life was over. I thought the best I could hope for was survival, scraping by day to day, keeping my siblings alive but never really living. And then I met you and everything changed. You changed everything for me too. I was so lonely, Brianna. I had money and land and cattle, all the things a man is supposed to want, but I was hollow inside. And then you walked out of the desert with your pride and your determination and your 5 compelling reasons for me to fall in love with you, and I was lost. 6 reasons, Brianna corrected with a smile. Do not forget yourself. You are reason enough all on your own. They stood together watching the stars emerge, the sounds of celebration fading behind them, and Brianna felt peace settle over her like a blanket. This was home. This was family. This was love. The years that followed were not always easy, but they were good. The ranch prospered under Preston and Brianna's joint management, growing from 200 head of cattle to over 500. They built on more additions to the house, added more outbuildings, and became one of the most successful operations in the region. The children grew and thrived. Emma started school and proved to be a voracious reader, always with her nose in a book. The twins discovered a talent for working with horses and began breeding and training them. Michael became Preston's right hand, learning every aspect of ranching and developing a reputation as a skilled cattleman, even in his teens. Sarah blossomed into a beautiful and capable young woman, eventually catching the eye of Thomas Winters's eldest son. 2 years after their wedding, Brianna gave birth to a son they named Robert, after her father. Preston held the tiny baby with wonder, this child that was part of both of them, and thanked Brianna for giving him yet another reason to count himself blessed. 3 years after that, a daughter arrived, named Grace for her sweet temperament. And 2 years later, another son called Andrew for Preston's father. The house that had once been too large for one man now rang with the sounds of children and laughter, of family dinners and celebrations, of life fully lived. Brianna would sometimes stand on the porch where Preston had first proposed, watching her husband work with Michael and the twins, seeing Emma and Sarah help with the younger children, hearing the baby crying from inside, and marvel at the journey that had brought her here. She thought of that desperate walk through the desert heat, going to beg for work from a stranger. She thought of standing in the general store, being turned away with nowhere else to turn. She thought of the moment Preston had said he would give her work, give her family a home, give them all a chance. And she thought of his proposal, his beautiful words about 6 reasons to marry her, seeing her siblings not as burdens but as blessings. It was the moment her life had truly begun, the moment she had gone from merely surviving to actually living. Michael was 18 when he married a rancher's daughter from a neighboring spread, a practical girl who loved cattle as much as he did. They built a house on the far corner of the Sterling ranch, and Michael took over managing half the herd. Preston was proud of the young man he had helped raise, seeing in him the son he had once lost in that Oregon fire. Sarah married Thomas Winters's son when she was 20, in a wedding even more elaborate than Brianna's had been. She moved to the Winters ranch but visited often, her own children playing with Brianna's youngest. The 2 women would sit on the porch, watching the next generation run and play, and reminisce about the hard times that seemed so distant now. The twins left for a few years to work on a larger ranch in California, learning new techniques and building their reputations. But they came back when they were 23, ready to settle down and start their own operation. Preston helped them buy land adjacent to his own, and the Sterling holdings grew even larger. Emma went to college, one of the first women from Reno to do so, studying literature and education. She became a teacher, opening a school in town and educating the next generation of Nevada children. She never married, content with her books and her students, but she was a beloved aunt to all her nieces and nephews. Through it all, Preston and Brianna remained the center. the heart of the family that had grown from desperate beginnings into something strong and lasting. They worked side by side every day, managing the ranch and raising their children, facing challenges together and celebrating victories as a team. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Preston organized a celebration that brought the entire extended family together. Children and grandchildren filled the house and spilled out into the yard. There was food and music and dancing, and as the sun set, Preston stood and raised his glass. 25 years ago, I was a lonely man with a ranch and no one to share it with. And then Brianna walked into my life with 5 siblings to feed and more courage than anyone I had ever met. She told me she needed work, but what she really did was give me a reason to live again, to build something meaningful, to create the family I thought I had lost forever. He looked at Brianna, his eyes still holding the same love they had on their wedding day. You told me you had 5 siblings to feed, and I told you that gave me 6 reasons to marry you. But I was wrong, Brianna. Every day since then has given me new reasons to be grateful I found you. Every laugh, every meal shared, every challenge faced together, every child born, every sunset watched from our porch. I have 1,000 reasons to love you now, 10,000 reasons to thank whatever fate brought you to my door. Brianna stood and joined him, taking his hand. And I have just as many reasons to be grateful for you, Preston Sterling. You saved my family when we had nowhere else to turn. You loved us when we were unlovable, broken and desperate and scared. You built us a home and gave us a future. But most of all, you showed me that love is not just about passion or romance. It is about partnership and respect, about working together toward common goals, about choosing each other every single day. She looked around at the faces of her family, at the children they had raised and the grandchildren already starting to arrive, at the life they had built together. You gave me 6 reasons to marry you, but you have given me a lifetime of reasons to stay. The celebration continued long into the night, but eventually, everyone went home or to bed, and Preston and Brianna found themselves alone on the porch once more, right where they had been the night he proposed. You ever think about how different things could have been? Brianna asked, leaning against his shoulder. If Mr. Henderson had not mentioned your name, if I had not walked out here that day, if you had turned me away, I try not to think about it. It would have been a wasted life, Brianna, empty and meaningless. Preston kissed her forehead. But I did not turn you away. You did walk out here. And now look at what we have built. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars, listening to the sounds of the ranch settling for the night. After all these years, it still felt like a gift, this life they shared. The desperate girl and the lonely cowboy who had found each other in the harsh Nevada desert and built something beautiful out of nothing. I love you, Brianna said softly. I love you too. Always have, always will. 6 reasons, she murmured with a smile. 1,000 reasons, Preston corrected. And counting. The years continued to pass, bringing their share of joys and sorrows as all years do. Preston's hair went gray and lines deepened around Brianna's eyes, but their partnership remained strong. They buried friends and welcomed great-grandchildren, weathered droughts and celebrated abundant years, adapted to the changing times while holding fast to the values that had built their life together. Michael took over full management of the ranch when Preston turned 60, though the older man still rode out to check the cattle most days, unable to fully retire from the work he loved. Sarah's children grew and had children of their own. The twins' horse breeding operation became famous throughout Nevada and beyond. Emma published a book of poetry that was taught in schools across the West, and Robert, Grace, and Andrew built their own successful lives, always coming home to the ranch for holidays and celebrations. On a warm evening in June, Preston and Brianna sat on their porch as they had done nearly every night for almost 40 years. Preston was 71 now, Brianna 69, and while they had slowed down, they were still active and engaged with life. "You remember the day we met?" Preston asked, his hand finding hers as naturally as breathing. "Every detail. I was so scared, so desperate, and you were so kind. You were so brave, walking all that way in the heat, ready to do whatever it took to save your family. I knew immediately that you were special, Brianna. Even before I fell in love with you, I admired you. I think I fell in love with you that first day, even though I would not admit it for weeks. The way you looked at my siblings, not with pity or judgment, but with understanding. The way you opened your home without hesitation. I had never met anyone like you," Preston chuckled. "We were quite a pair, were we not? Two lonely people carrying the weight of the world, finding each other at exactly the right moment. Do you think it was fate? I think it was grace. Undeserved but freely given, the best gift of my life." They sat together as the sun set, painting the Nevada sky in shades of gold and crimson. The ranch spread out before them, prosperous and peaceful, full of the life they had built together. In the distance, they could see Michael's house with smoke rising from the chimney, and beyond that, the winters spread where Sarah lived with her family. "We did well, did we not?" Brianna said. "Those 5 scared, hungry children all grew up strong and happy. We gave them the stability and love they needed. We did it together. I could not have done it without you. And I could not have done it without you. Preston, you gave me everything. Hope when I had none, a home when I was homeless, love when I thought I would never find it. You took on 6 people who were not your responsibility and made us your family. Not everyone would do that. Anyone with sense would have done it. 6 reasons to marry you, remember. Best decision I ever made." Brianna laughed, the sound still bright even after all these years. "You and your 6 reasons. You have been saying that for 40 years. And I will say it for another 40 if I am granted them. You are the love of my life, Brianna Sterling. Everything good in my world exists because you walked into it." They stayed on the porch until the stars came out, holding hands and talking about everything and nothing, secure in the love they had built over decades. When they finally went inside, Preston helped Brianna up the steps with the gallantry he had always shown her, and they walked into the house they had filled with love and laughter for all these years. The story could have ended in tragedy, with a desperate woman and 5 starving children losing everything. But instead, it became a love story, a testament to the power of compassion and courage, of 2 people choosing to build something beautiful in a harsh and unforgiving world. Preston Sterling had said he saw 6 reasons to marry Brianna Klein when she stood before him desperate and afraid. But the truth was simpler and more profound. He saw a woman worth loving, a family worth saving, and a future worth building. And Brianna, in turn, had seen a man worth trusting, worth loving, worth spending a lifetime beside. They grew old together, surrounded by the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who were the legacy of their love. The ranch prospered for generations, a testimony to what could be built when 2 people committed to working together, to honoring their promises, to choosing love every single day. And on quiet evenings, when the great-grandchildren asked how Grandma Brianna and Grandpa Preston met, the story was always the same. A desperate woman, 5 hungry children, a kind cowboy, and 6 reasons that became a lifetime of love. It was the story of the Klein family, saved from the edge of disaster. It was the story of Preston Sterling, who found the family he thought he had lost. But most of all, it was a love story, simple and true, about 2 people who found each other when they needed it most and built a life that echoed through generations. They lived out their days together, Preston and Brianna, in the home they had made, surrounded by the family they had built. And when they were very old, sitting on that porch one last time, Preston took Brianna's hand and said what he had said 1,000 times before, 6 reasons. And Brianna smiled and replied, "A lifetime of reasons." "Forever," Preston agreed. "Forever," Brianna echoed, and it was.